Welcome. In this video tutorial, we're going to continue looking at the Flash multimedia platform, and we're going to create a small online quiz module. One thing to note is that we're currently using Macromedia Flash. This is a product from roughly 2004. And if you're going to continue to develop in Flash, I do highly recommend that you update to a newer version, one of the Adobe Flash releases. Currently it's CS5, but one of those newer releases from the Creative Suite utilizing ActionScript 3 is probably a better bet for developing projects that you're looking to have a long lifespan. But to take a look at the fundamentals of Flash and action scripting, the Macromedia Flash MX will work for us. And since that's what's in our computer lab, let's go ahead. What I have here is the Flash interface. We have our tools set over here, timeline across the top where we can see our frames. We have this nice red playhead. We'll refer to this area right in the middle, the white area, as the stage. Over here we have some menus, and I'm going to click on Window, Library to open the library, and I'm just going to drag that right over here because I do want to see my library. I'm going to open this Properties tab down here at the bottom and take a note that I'm looking at a 550 by 400 pixel project, and currently the background of that's white. I can change that here. 12 frames per second. I'm going to keep the Properties window open, click up here in this drop down menu, and I'm going to try to fit the frame here so I can see what I'm working at. And that's going to be slightly smaller than real time, but it'll give us a better idea, so that way I can look at my properties and actions but still see my stage. The first step, let's see, I'll pull this up just a shade. Great. The first thing I'm going to do is create sort of an outline boundary for my movie, and the way that I'm going to do that is to click on black here for the stroke color, and for the fill color, why don't I make it green, just so we can once again remember how the stroke and the fill work. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and just a little smaller than the actual size of my stage, I'm going to pull this rectangle tool out. I'll let it go there. Now note what I get is this this green box with a black border. If I click on the inside, it just selects the inner fill but not the stroke, and when I let it go, now I have this nice sort of bounding box here on the outside. And I'm going to name this first layer background. Now my background is where once again I have that outline. Next I'm going to create another new layer. I'm going to call it text. And I'm going to click on the frame. When I say click on the frame, click on the actual frame in the timeline. Don't click up above where the number is. And it's highlighted. You see that when it turns black, that means that's the frame that whatever action or object I put onto the stage, that's where it's going to exist in the layers and on the timeline. I'm going to click my text tool here. It's the A. Right now I have green text. That's not really what I'm looking for. I'm going to choose black. Arial's fine. And for our purposes here, static works. So I'm just going to click in the middle. And what I'm doing now is just creating a welcome screen, kind of a landing page for our quiz. I'm going to select this. It was at 30. I'm going to make it out a little bigger. Bump it up to say 60. Click on my arrow tool, or I can move my selection this way. And I can just move that object right around. Notice when an object is selected, I get this nice blue boundary or sort of outline, and I know that that's what's selected. Also, note when I click that, it shows me what layer it's in up here. when the object is selected and I see that nice blue outline, I can grab onto it with my move arrow tool right here, or I can utilize the arrow keys to get some pretty small gestures, 1 pixel at a time, so I can get some fine tuning. And that looks good. So we have a border and a welcome text. At this point, let's save our quiz file. I'm going to go to File and say Save. Now I created if I look on my desktop, a folder that I called Flash Quiz, and in there I have a folder that has some images. These are images that I have previously gathered. One is a red X, one is a green check mark. We'll utilize those images. So it's nice to have your images ready to go for you once you start. In this folder here, I'm gonna call my file flash_quiz. I highly recommend do not put any spaces in the name of your file, because when you publish this, and I assume that you're trying to utilize this for the web, if you have any spaces, it will interrupt the location of your files on the web. So if you want to put a space in, use an underscore like I did here. Just click Save. And now we're saved. We're good to go. The next step, we're going to insert a symbol. And remember that symbols can be movie clips or buttons. They can be graphics. Now the reason we create symbols is because then we can apply an action to them. So I'm going to go to the Insert drop-down menu up here and click New Symbol. And this time we're going to choose a button. And I'm going to call this button Start. When I click OK, I see the button show up over here in my library. And by default, it just jumps straight into the button itself. So I can always find my location within the project by looking at this navigator here. I see that I'm not in my main stage or scene 1 anymore. I'm within actually scene 1 and then over in this Start button. And right now I'm currently in the Start button as it exists in the library. There is no, and if I click back to scene 1, I don't have the button on my stage yet. So what I'm actually editing is the button as it exists over here. Let me click on the Start button again, and it takes me back to this editor. I'm going to click in this frame, and I'm going to create 2 layers, sort of a background layer. And I'll choose a black background and an inner fill of light gray. And what I'm going to do is grab my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to create a sort of a small rectangle like this. Great. Now notice that I have put this object right here in this first frame of my button, which is up, so that is what the button's going to look like when it's up. I need to put a frame over here in the end by clicking Insert, Frame, and now I have this background in all of the states of my button, whether it's up, whether the mouse is over it, whether the mouse is down or clicking. So I can call this layer background, and I'm going to add another layer over the top of it. I'll call this text. I'm going to click that first frame and choose the text tool, and I'm going to choose my text color. I'll make it sort of a nice dark red. 60 is going to be much too big, so let's bring that down to about 25 and see how that looks. Click on that frame and just click right inside my box there, and I'm going to type out Start. This looks still a little small. Let's see if we can bump this up, get it a little bigger. 30 should be good. And I'm going to click my arrow tool, and now I can move this right sort of in the middle of my button. So this is my start button. This is how the start button will look if the mouse is not on it, whether the mouse is over it, down, or clicking. I'm going to insert a keyframe right here on this over on my text layer by clicking Insert Keyframe. And what I'm going to do here is grab my text tool again and select that start text. Get the whole thing here. And I'll change the color to something like orange. So the effect will be that if the mouse is not over the top of the button, the text will be red. But if the mouse is over the button, clicking down on it, then the text will be orange, which just gives us a small effect that we have this interactivity of the button. So that should do it for our button. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to click in Scene 1, and that'll take us to our stage. I have my start button over here in my library, but I'm going to add a new layer to put that button on, and I'll call that Buttons. And I'll click in that first frame on the Buttons layer. Now I can grab my button from my library and just pull it right over onto the stage. Now I have my welcome text and my start button. My start button doesn't do anything yet. I have not applied any action script to it, and that'll be the next step right here. Create some interactivity. I'm going to grab my arrow tool here. I'm going to click on the button. Now the button itself is selected. Notice I can see that in the properties window here that this button is selected. I'm going to shut the properties window down and open the actions window up. Now if it's not easy for you just to type in text into this area, if it's shrunk down, you might need to go to this button here, the view options, and make sure the expert mode is enabled. That's a handy little trick. Now let me check the action script that we're going to add here. I'll paste it right in. The action script for this button says, on the release of the button, we're going to go to and stop at frame number 2 in our timeline. Now we don't have anything on frame 2 yet, but we're just about to add that. And that's where the first question for our quiz is going to be. So what we're telling this start button is to, once it's clicked, go to and stop on frame 2 where our first question is. This has been applied to the start button. Now we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 frames in our movie where we have a start window, question 1, question 2, and a finish window. So I'll go ahead right now with my background and I will just click in frame number 4, go up to Insert, and I'll insert a frame there. And that means on all of the frames of our quiz, we're going to have that background outline. And what it does is it gives us the first 4 frames of our video, or of our quiz. Now, what the timeline wants to do naturally is start at frame 1 and play all 4 frames simultaneously. That's not what we want it to do. What we want it to do is when the movie loads, or the interactive loads, is to stop on this first frame and wait until the user clicks the start button. So to make that stop happen, we need to add a bit of code.